I want to give a special thanks to Miss Ellie Gordman for some of the inspiration for the topic of this class. So much appreciated, and I hope you guys appreciate the topic as much as I did preparing it. So I want to pay attention to one very important detail as we're going to kind of explore this topic, and that is because we're going to focus on good deeds and mitzvahs in general. We're going to focus kind of on tzedakah, which is kind of that overarching good deed that we think of. And I want to make sure as we go through this exploration that we are appreciating that when it comes to tzedakah, when it comes to the mitzvah of giving to those who need, action is most important. The fact is, the Talmud tells us that if someone has a hole in his pocket and some money falls out and a poor person finds it and is able to feed himself with that money, even though there was no intention involved whatsoever, you have performed the mitzvah of tzedakah, you have helped the person in need. So intention is actually unnecessary, but we're going to still explore the idea of intentions nonetheless. Okay, as we get our PowerPoint hopefully going, I want to thank Naomi and Jared, right? Yeah. For getting things working, but as we go, I want you to, everybody has a pen and something to write on? All right. So I want you to take a moment and think of the last nice thing, good deed, so to speak, that you did, and how it made you feel. Hopefully it wasn't more than a day or two ago. If it was, we'll talk later. But yeah, think of the last good thing that you can think of that you did, the last nice thing you did for someone, and how it made you feel. All right. Give everybody a moment there. All right. I'm going to ask a few questions. This is part of an exercise to get us going into what we will be talking about. All right. The next thing I want you to think of is if somebody gave you, let's say I gave you, this is going to be odd, right? The rabbi is giving the congregants money, but if I gave you $1,000 just now, what would be the first thing you would do with it? Think of that for a moment. You can write that down as well. No essays, by the way, just one thing. All right. Now, I want you to think of something meaningful you would do with that $1,000. That same $1,000, but I want you to write down something meaningful that you would do. Okay. So we're going to explore today, hold those thoughts. If you've written them down, great. If you haven't written them down, just make sure they're in your brain because we're going to come back to that in a moment. We're going to explore today 3 subject lines, which are going to come together. Number 1 is meaningfulness, things of meaning. What brings us meaning? Topic number 2 is, my head is blanking. Topic number 2 is, thank you. No, it's all good. It's all good. Just missing the word for some reason. Okay. Yeah, it's a hard word. Sorry. That's why I forgot about it. Okay. Sorry. So topic number 1 we're going to explore is meaningfulness. Meaningful acts, how we bring meaning to our lives. Number 2 is rights. Rights that we have as humans. And we're going to tie that all together with the idea that we're all pretty familiar with called tikkun olam. Okay. So if our PowerPoint was working, I would show you a news clipping. A story that took place, and it was an interview that happened in the Associated Press in 2006. Forgetting the person's name, because I'm not that great at that type of thing, but it was a fellow who was climbing Mount Everest in 2006. And on his way up, he was with a couple of other people, and he meets a fellow, an Australian guy named something Hall. His last name was Hall. And the fellow was not fully with the program. Clearly, he was climbing up the mountain or climbing down the mountain, whatever had happened, and his oxygen ran out and he was disoriented, and the rest of his group had thought that he was gone and left him on the mountain. And this fellow, on the way up the mountain, about 1,000 feet from the summit, meets this fellow and stops and starts helping him out, giving him oxygen, food, and eventually helped him down the mountain. While they were helping the fellow, two people were climbing up the mountain, two Italians, no offense to the Italians, and were asked to help out, and they made believe they didn't speak English. Eventually they found out that they spoke perfect English, but didn't bother to help at all. And on the way up and down, many people actually, several weeks before, there was somebody who had a similar situation and nobody bothered to stop, and obviously that person didn't make it. So this fellow, Mr. Hall, eventually survived, and the first fellow was Travis, I believe his first name was interviewed about his heroic deed. And he was asked about it. And one of the statements he made was very fascinating. He spoke about how could he leave the fellow on the mountain, even though, right, I can climb Everest again, but if I hadn't saved that person, that life would have been lost, and how would have I lived with myself? How would I have lived with myself for the rest of my life if I knew that I could have helped that person and I didn't? Right? Now, he obviously did something heroic. He saved someone's life. And let's contrast that with the people who didn't bother to stop. But was his action what you'd call altruistic? No. Right? Now, I want you to think for a moment. I want to go back to that thought. Is there true altruism? Can we truly do something for someone else that doesn't give us any benefit? Now, I'm sorry to say, I would have had a video up here from Friends, the TV show, where they debate this idea. It's very funny, by the way. I'm sorry. I'm not as funny as they are. That's why they get paid millions of dollars to do what they do. But the idea is we're going to approach this question. Can you really do something for someone else without deriving any benefit from yourself, for yourself?
What about just feeling good about it? Is that deriving a benefit?
Does that not count as some benefit? Feeling better about yourself? Right? So is there true altruism? And that approaches the question of meaningfulness, right? Let's think about that for a moment. We want to have meaning in our lives. We've got things that we can do. We can do lots of things with meaning, etc. When we think of that, we are thinking of things that bring us pleasure, bring us joy, right? They bring meaning to our lives. And we can think of all the things. I want you to look back at your note that you wrote and think about the thing that brought you meaning, right? The $1,000 that you'd spend that would bring you meaning. And is there some sort of selfish component to it? To some extent, there's got to be some piece of selfishness applied to it. And I want to make sure that we understand, selfishness is not a bad word. It's not even a 4-letter word, whatever amount of letters it is. But it's not a bad word. And again, going back to the beginning as the caveat that I mentioned, doing good things, even though you don't have the best of intentions, that's not, as long as it gets done, you're in a good place. So I want to now go back to the story of Queen Esther. We'll quickly synopsize. Right? We're all familiar with the story of the Megillah. We're going to celebrate Purim very shortly. Yes, it's in about 6 weeks. And I want to think about that story for a moment. So just to review, in case you've forgotten the story, there is a king of many nations, 127 nations, and he has a dispute, we'll call it a dispute with his wife. He executes his wife, and he finds a new wife named Esther. Esther is Jewish, but she hides her identity based on her uncle or whatever the different Talmudic opinions are as to what exactly the relationship was. He advises her not to reveal her Judaism, and eventually there is a decree against the Jewish people that for all of them to be destroyed by the evil Haman. And at this point, Mordechai sends a messenger to Esther and tells her to intercede. And she, of course, responds that anybody who goes to the king without permission is killed. No questions asked. So I want to read to you the next statement, the response that Esther has for her uncle Mordechai. Okay? He says like that. She says like this. Esther said, read this way. Mordechai sent his reply to Esther. Don't think for a moment that because you are in the palace, you will escape when all Jews are killed. Actually, if you stay quiet now, the Jews will find relief and safety through a different route. And you and your father's household will perish. And who knows? Maybe it was for just such an occasion that you were made queen. Okay, so, right, that really brings home the idea that we were discussing. Is there something selfless, right? Can we truly do something selfless? Sometimes we need Hollywood to help us figure that out a little bit, but that's the gist of it. So we're going to explore today the uniquely Jewish approach to this question of selflessness. Can we do something meaningful that is also selfless? And that's what we brought in the story of the Megillah. We brought in the story of Esther. And if we were looking at the response that Mordechai gave to Esther, that we just quoted, we'll re-quote it in a moment. But we're going to focus again here on the family philosophy. So here we go. This is the book of Tanakh. We're just skipping ahead to where we're up to, right? This is the story. And let's look at the two components to Mordechai's response to Esther. And again, I'm going to read that section out one more time. Mordechai's response to Esther. Mordechai sent his reply to Esther. And this is the quote. Don't think for a moment that because you're in the palace, you will escape from when all other Jews are killed. Actually, if you stay quiet now, the Jews will find relief and safety through another route, and you and your father's household will perish. And who knows? Maybe it was just for such an occasion that you were made queen. Now, if you think about that for a moment, how many parts is there to the response of Mordechai to Esther? I'll give you a hint. It's 2. All right. What's the first one? First one's pretty straightforward. You and your father's house will be lost. Right? In other words, by you not stepping in, you're not saving yourself, and right, you're going to help yourself by also helping the Jewish people. Right? Non-altruistic. This is a meaningful thing that she can do to protect herself. Right? But let's analyze the second response. Perhaps for this you became queen. Now we're looking at a whole other angle. The difference between these two halves of the response can be used in different languages. The first part is meaning. She's doing something meaningful, something useful that's going to help her. The second part we'll call, purpose. Purpose is very different than meaning. Meaning, as we'll see, applies to things that are meaningful to me. They are self-centered. And purpose is going to be very different. Let's analyze this for a moment as we continue to explore. Let's look at meaning for a minute. And I want you to think about the item that you wrote down on your paper or you thought about in your brain. What would you do with that $1,000? What's something meaningful you would do with that $1,000? And if you think about that for a moment, is anybody willing to share what they wrote?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Help pay for my grandkids' summer Jewish camp.
Fantastic. Why is that meaningful to you?
So they will become better Jewish citizens as they grow up.
And why do you need that?
We all need it.
But it's something that would make you feel good,
Yes.
perpetuating our Judaism, continuing our Judaism, right? That perspective. Anybody else want to share? Go ahead.
I would donate it to the food bank.
Donate it for the food bank. Why would that be meaningful to you?
There are many people in our community who are food insecure, and somehow they're able to get more food for $1 than any of us mere mortals.
Sure.
So it would maximize the opportunity rather than just giving people money.
And then that would, so let's think about the feeling. Would that make you feel good when people are fed?
It makes me feel bad that people need to be fed.
Okay.
So it's hard.
It's an interesting line. All right, perfect. So let's focus on this idea of meaning for a second, right? Meaning, let's think about the sequence. There's the person that has meaning. And if we look at it in the broader sense, is I happen to exist and let me live a meaningful life. I want to do things that are meaningful, that are useful, that are helpful, right? Now, if you contrast that on the other side is the value is relatively arbitrary because what's important to you may not be important to him. I don't know if you would spend your $1,000 on Jewish summer camp, and I'm not sure if you would spend your $1,000 to the food bank. And that's fine, because in other words, you're choosing what's meaningful to me. It's personal. It's quote unquote selfish, right? And again, nothing wrong with that, but we're just analyzing this point to get to the Jewish perspective, the Jewish way of thinking, the Jewish family way of thinking of this idea. And therefore, we can attribute any meaning to life. This is a fascinating idea. Is anybody willing to share something, and there's no judgment in this room, right? Anybody willing to share something that they wrote down on their meaning section, what they would spend $1,000 on, that is not necessarily or necessarily not meaningful to anybody else in this room? Nobody's?
I was going to get a new floor.
A new floor. All right? Absolutely. And that would be meaningful, right? Now, I could add, you want the new floor because people come visit your house all the time. You host Shabbat dinners. I happen to know, what the floor is used for. Personal connection there. The point is that we can attribute meaning to anything, right? I watched the video recently, and I'm sorry that I'm going to admit that I spend some time watching useless videos. But there was a fellow who has been eating McDonald's cheeseburgers for some 30 years, and he's collected every single one. It's extremely meaningful to him. He's leaving the collection to his children after he dies. I don't think anybody in this room would find that meaningful. But this little box, or I don't know what he did. At some point they switched, I don't know. But he kept every receipt, like he's got it very methodically organized. It's a fantastic story. And I'm sure there's some lesson in it for us, but I don't think anybody here would be excited about something like that. But for him, this is his whole life. He's attributed meaning to Big Mac cheeseburgers. That's what he's done. There are people that have collections of toys. There are people that have, right, they do all kinds of things. People like to go play golf. They'll spend all the money in the world going to play golf. So we can attribute meaning however we like because it's self-centered. It's about what we like. And that's how meaning works. Let's take the other side of things for a moment. Let's take purpose. Purpose is extremely different. Because purpose, the sequence is, purpose equals the person. What's his personal perspective? Something is needed. I am introduced to fill that need. In other words, I'm here for a reason. I didn't create the meaning. The purpose is pre-created for me. It's already in existence before I got here. There's already a purpose. And therefore, the value is inherent. I didn't create the value. It's not arbitrary. It was predetermined that this is a value. There is an objective purpose to life. I'm here for a reason. And this is a fascinating quote from Rabbi Kook. Anybody here familiar with Rabbi Kook? A famous rabbi who lived he was born in the early 1900s. And he was one of the foremost religious Zionists. If you go to Israel today, he's quite famous. There's a lot of Rav Kook streets if you go to Israel. Fascinating fellow. And he said, and I'll quote the line that he says. He says, "Before I was created, during all the unlimited time before I was created, there was nothing in the world that needed me. If I was needed for any purpose or to fulfill a specific task, I would have been created. And as I was not created until this time, it is a sign that there was no reason to be created until then. There was no need for me, but for the time when I was created. Then the time had come for me to accomplish something to perfect all of existence." And in the paraphrasing of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, when your birthday is the day that God decided the world could not continue without you. We have an inherent purpose on this world. We didn't create the purpose. We didn't make the purpose. Purpose is designed for us. It exists before we got there. Something is needed, and I am introduced to fill that need. This is the Jewish perspective of things. We don't create our own meaning. Meaning is created for us. Purpose is created for us, and we get to partake. We get to get involved in the meaning that's created for us. Okay. Your mission precedes your coming into the world. Now, we'll just final review of this topic, right? Meaning, let's look at the cycle of meaning. Meaning, I am looking for something meaningful that I determine what meaning, and I determine what meaning is. What happens next is, it might be helpful to someone else, right? It might be helpful to someone else, as the two examples that were given to us here. It might be helpful to someone else. And then, success is determined by whether or not I found it meaningful, right? Did I find it meaningful? At the end of the day, is if the money that you had given to the food bank had gone to a different cause, you wouldn't necessarily be happy with it, right? If the money you had given towards, in theoretical money, had gone towards, right? If you had switched roles, would you have found it meaningful? Not necessarily, because it's about what I feel. That's meaning. But if we go to purpose, there's a mission, which means it's the reason I am here in general or in a given situation. It's an important little caveat, which we'll get to later, perhaps. It might be enjoyable to me. It might not be. If I have a mission, I may enjoy the mission or not, and that's okay. And success is determined by whether or not the need was filled. It has nothing to do with how I feel. It has to do with what was accomplished. So, family philosophy. We've got meaningful life, human rights, which we talked about in Tikkun Olam. Those are the three topics we touched on in the beginning. We mentioned in the beginning. We're going to cross off meaningful life, and we're going to switch it to purpose. Our life is not about meaning. Our life should be about purpose. Any questions? Either I've done a fantastic job or I've done a terrible job. So there's a balance there. All right, let's move on to the next subject of human rights. I want to contrast, as you see up on the board, the Torah perspective of life and the world perspective of life. Okay? In the Torah, in the Ten Commandments, we're given a command of preserving life, and it comes in the form of, thou shalt not murder. Lo sirtzach. We're going to read it actually next 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, we'll read the Torah portion of the Ten Commandments. Thou shalt not murder. Okay, let's contrast that with the Declaration of Human Rights by the UN, whether we like them or not, but they have a Declaration of Human Rights, and it says everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person. And right in American law, we've got a similar one in our Declaration of Independence, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What difference is there between these two? You notice any nuance of difference between the approach of thou shalt not murder and you have the right to life and liberty and security of person or pursuit of happiness?
The commandment is something that you can control and decide, and the UN one is something that you have to rely on other people to decide.
Interesting. So it's proactive versus non-proactive. There's a word for that, but reactive. Okay. Any other? Go ahead.
The first is directed at the potential perpetrator, and the second one is directed at the potential victim.
Right. So in other words, it's given a directive. This is something you should do. And the other one, right, the second one is kind of general, right? Not specific. No questions. Right. Okay.
Well, the terms life, liberty, and security, you can argue of what that really entails. But I think murder is pretty clear cut.
Right. So that's kind of what Annetta's saying, right? So it's more ambiguous, it's more vague versus very specific. Thou shalt not murder. Okay. Anybody else have anything? Any other nuances? I want to point out something which is kind of touched upon. Oh, sorry.
I would say the first is the right to life, and the second is more speaking toward quality of life.
Okay, so life specifically versus general, more, right, okay. Kind of ties a little bit into specifics versus ambiguity that was touched on, but a slightly different nuance on that, a different perspective. Okay. Somebody else, yeah?
Well, one is kind of the corollary of the other. If everyone has a right to life, the only way to honor that is for no one to murder.
I like that, okay. So there's a connection to it. It's giving you more specifics, a more detailed approach to what number two. Number one gives you something to do about it. All right, anybody else that I'm missing? Okay, so let's analyze. All those things are fantastic. They're great ideas. We're going to focus on something which was kind of skated upon in some of the responses here. Okay? The difference is, right, thou shalt not murder. What am I giving? Kind of talking about what Barry was saying. What am I doing? What should I do about it?
It's a directive.
Exactly, a directive. The other one is, coming from a different perspective, what do I deserve? I have the right to live, right? So, kind of touched upon as well, it's about other people or is it about me? Right to live, that's me. The responsibility that I have is what do I do about it? Now, we talked about Friends, so now we can talk about Seinfeld. Everybody watched the terrible last episode of Seinfeld? Right? That's the innocent bystander discussion. In American law, you can be an innocent bystander. In Torah law, you may not be an innocent bystander. And there's a quote from Mishnah. Sorry, there was a handout that just on my end that got mumble jumbled. Technology and me don't get along so well. I'm young, but not that young, I guess. Okay. And the Talmud tells us a very fantastic law. This comes from the Talmud. I'll give you chapter and verse if you need. I want to read the words correctly. The verse states, how do I know that if you see another drowning in the river, or being dragged by an animal, or attacked by robbers, that you are obligated to intervene? Because it says, you shall not stand by the shedding of your fellow's blood. Verse in the book of Leviticus, the book of Vayikra says, you shall lo samad al dam reyechi, you should not stand by your brother's blood. Says the Talmud that is a directive that if you see someone in danger, you must save them. There is no such requirement in any other, or I think any other Western civilization for certain, but maybe no other law in the world. You can see someone else in danger, you don't have to save them. In Jewish law, in Torah law, you must. Now, of course, there are exceptions to the rule. If it's going to put your own life in danger or other different circumstances, it's not across the board. But generally speaking, I have a responsibility to save other people's lives. And that's where the big schism unfolds. In modern secular law, we perceive life as a right. Things that we have are rights. We have a Bill of Rights. I have no obligation. On the other hand, Torah law focuses on the responsibility. Life is not a right that I have, but rather a responsibility that I have to share with others. It's not me focused, it's others focused, which is a major difference. The Jewish perspective is not about what is in it for me, but rather how can I help others. In the words of JFK, I'm sure someone here can quote exactly when he said it, because it's a pretty famous line. Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. He was spouting Torah. I don't know if he even knew it. But the Jewish perspective is very much responsibility versus rights.
His speechwriter was Jewish.
Aha! See, now we know the secrets. Got it. You think he studied Talmud? Probably. Enough, right? Okay. So, when we look at the world, right? When we look at life, and it's the same thing with things that we own. Any experience around the world, around our existence that we perceive, secular law, modern law will say you have the right. You have the right to your possessions. No one can infringe on your rights. When it comes to Torah law, when it comes to Jewish law, the Jewish perspective is it's not about your rights, but rather your responsibility. If you see, as in another example, right, the same line, not about life, but about possessions, if the Torah describes that if you see a donkey laden down with goods that's struggling under its load, you have a responsibility to help the owner unload it and save his possessions. Because people's objects, what people own, it's not just their right to own it, but it's your responsibility for them to keep it. And that goes across Torah perspective, across the whole spectrum. It's not about rights, it's about responsibility. Okay. So, continuing on. Meaningful life. We don't believe in a meaningful life, but rather we believe in purpose. We believe in purpose. we don't think of it as human rights, but rather our responsibility. What can we do? What do we have to do to keep it going? And those two really much interconnect with one another. Because when it comes to rights, I don't want to do anything that puts me out. I don't want to do anything that bothers me. And that is not meaningful. I don't care about what's meaningful to you. I care about what's meaningful to me. It's not meaningful to me, then I don't have to help you. But when it comes to the Jewish perspective, now we're thinking, is there a purpose here? Is there someone I can help? Or is there some way I can help them? And if there is, then obviously it's my job to step in. It's my responsibility to take place. Okay. Now we're going to focus on Tikkun Olam for a moment. This term is pretty well used, right? People know it. We all love Tikkun Olam, something that we all get behind. Now, to give us a little perspective on this subject, I want to ask you a question. If you were God, I'm not saying you are, right? No grandizations, etc. If you, in your own mind, were God, and of course we're limited and we're not imagining we're God, but if you were God, and you had a moment to talk to every single person, let's say every Jewish person, or let's say the whole world, you had an opportunity to address everybody, what would you say?
Be nice to everybody.
Fantastic. Be nice to everybody. Right? That's great. Anybody else?
Do unto others as you want done unto you.
Absolutely, right? Famous statement of Hillel. Unto others do not do what you wouldn't want done to you. Anybody else?
Oh, this is commentary, won't go anywhere.
Right. But, exactly. Anybody else have an idea what you would say? Imagination, right? Everyone always, right? We always have this, what is God thinking, right? What would you do? What would you do if you had an opportunity to speak to everybody? Send a message to the world. You're God.
Take the promotion.
Fair enough. That's the one. All right. Do you know what God said? You know what? God did this. There was one time in history that the entire Jewish nation received prophetic vision, prophetic message, different than the rest of history, which Moshe or some other prophet received the message and then translated it to the people or transmitted it to the people. And that is the Ten Commandments. Anybody with the Ten Commandments? Anybody remember them? Okay. We're going to read it in a couple, right? We touched on them a few moments ago. Commandment number 1, I am Hashem, your God, who has taken you out of Egypt. Belief in God. Number 2, have no other gods before me. Right? Prohibition against idol worship. Number 3 is don't take God's name in vain. Don't swear falsely in God's name. Number 4 is, I always confuse 4 and 5. Honor your parents or keep Shabbat? I always confuse which one is which. Keep Shabbat and honor your parents, and that'll give you long life. And then the last 5 are also most fantastic. Do not murder. Do not steal. Do not testify falsely. Do not covet. We missed one. And do not commit adultery. Right? 10 commandments. 9, number 10 is covet.
No, 9.
Well, do not covet the neighbor's wife. It's okay. Either way, it's the same 10. It's the same 10. The order doesn't matter right now, but this is the message that God gave the entire Jewish nation when he was on Mount Sinai. The entire nation's there. Everyone's there. They're listening to God, and it's not be nice. It's not unto others do not do. Why? You know what the answer? Because the term tikkun olam, right? Let's fix the world. Let's repair the world. That's the literal translation of tikkun olam, is very nice. But when God wants to give us a message, we need specifics. God's not telling us, okay, go ahead and make the world a better place, right? Beautiful message, make the world a better place. Meaningless. Okay, I'm using the word meaningless. But it's useless because I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do it. Now, if it comes to meaning, if it was all about just meaning, then it would be how I feel the world would be a better place. Fantastic. Then I can make up whatever I want. I can collect cheeseburgers, and that would be my meaning, right? That would be me making the world a better place. I'm sharing my love for cheeseburgers, or whatever it may be. I can make it up. But if it's purpose-based, then I need specifics. And in order for it to resonate, you're going to need specifics. There are specifics. Now, let's analyze the mitzvah of tzedakah for a quick moment. As we said, we're going to go to that mitzvah. There is a directive. There is a mitzvah. There's a command to give 10% of our earnings to tzedakah. Now, this is very fascinating. In my home, my kids, which can attest to this, when they were little, now they've already graduated out a little bit, but when they were much littler, if I gave them a nickel or a dime or a quarter, they didn't call it money. You know what they called it? Tzedakah. They right away wanted to put it in the pushka. They wanted to put it in the charity box. What am I trying to say? Is that what's your perspective on money that you have? When we take all these three components together, when you take this picture, the idea of purpose versus meaning, the idea of responsibility versus rights, and the specifics of tikkun olam, making the world a better place, using specifics, you don't perceive the money in your pocket, the money in your bank account the same way. How does it work? Going back to Rav Kook's statement, if you think about it that way, that if you have money in your pocket, it's meant to sustain you, but it's also there for a reason. There's a purpose for that money. That money needs to also support people who need. It's not your money per se, but it belongs to others. It was given to you with the purpose of sharing it with those who need it. That's why, if you think about it for a moment, when you think about the mitzvah of tzedakah, and the translation is wholly incorrect. What does the word charity mean? It means I'm charitable, that out of my good heart, I am giving something that belongs to me, to someone else, because I find it meaningful, probably. That's meaningful. Charity is a translation, an English translation, because that's the perspective we have today. What's the Hebrew word for charity? Tzedakah. Thank you. Justice. Tzedek. What is tzedek? Justice. Righteousness is that we're giving what we have, but what we have doesn't really belong to us, but rather belonged to someone else in the first place. There's a purpose for that money in the first place. Huh? It's an obligation. It's a responsibility. Exactly. The money I have, I need the money for myself, right? Just let's overlay the command to save someone who's drowning to the mitzvah of tzedakah. Assuming that it's not going to hurt me, I have a responsibility. My being there is purposeful. I'm there to be able to help someone else, right? The perspective is the reason why I'm standing on the river and there's someone that got caught in the current, the reason I'm there is so that I can help that person. Let's overlay that to tzedakah is when I have the money in my account or in my pocket, the idea is that what I need for me is there, assuming I'm not going to get hurt by giving, I have to give, and the rest of it is there to help someone else. It's there for a reason. I didn't decide it. It doesn't matter what I think about it. It's about what my responsibility is, what my purpose is. And that's why we need the specifics. How do I make the world a better place? You know how you make the world a better place? By not murdering. In other words, finding purpose and responsibility towards others' lives, towards others' possessions. Finding responsibility in keeping marriage sacred. Honoring your parents. Keeping Shabbat. Those are specifics that tell us how to make the world a better place. How to repair the world. So when we talk about donate, there's a purpose why I have this money. I have a responsibility to fulfill that purpose. Which in other words, detailed action. 10%, as we mentioned, there's a mitzvah to give 10% of our earnings to tzedakah. And another component is constant giving. This is a fascinating subject, and we'll hand out, I don't know where the box went. It's here. We'll hand out these little, these boxes. If you mind giving me one first, then I'll use it as a... Yeah, we can grab them on the way out. About a year ago, I was at the Capitol with the governor, and we introduced these little ARCs. ARCs is an acronym for Acts of Routine Kindness. And now it's specifically created as an ARC. Again, the acronym helps also. But the idea of the ARC is that this is a way of living, not just for the Jewish people, but for all of the children of Noah, all citizens of the world. And the idea is that you put this somewhere where, on your nightstand, in your car, and whenever you have loose change, every day, put something in this box. Now, I introduced this, and afterwards Governor Pillen spoke, and he picked it up and he says, I never believed that I would have said this, but I think everybody should get rid of their piggy banks and get one of these. He said this out loud. And the idea is, when you look at the difference between a piggy bank and a tzedakah box, a piggy bank is meaningful. It's rights. It's mine. I want to hold on to it. I'm going to do what I want with it. Tzedakah box is putting it somewhere noticeable. It's about other people. It's about helping others. It's about my responsibility to others. The money I have in my pocket is helpful to others. So I want everybody to take one or two and put it somewhere conspicuous, because it's exactly the idea. Constant giving. It makes us into kinder people. It makes us into a person that's making the world a better place by constantly giving. There's actually a fascinating idea that Maimonides talks about. Everybody here hopefully somewhat familiar with Maimonides. But he says he's a halachic, he writes halachic law, rulings, Jewish law, and he says it's actually better to give a small amount every day than to give one big donation once a year or whatever it may be. Because every act that you're doing is a separate action. It makes you an active good person, an active person, a person who's acting in a good way, which changes who you are. So that's number two. Number one is, again, 10%, detailed action, constant giving, and not just money, right? Not just money is another one. You could use your time. Your time can be donated as well. And that's, again, creating detailed oriented things where it's not tikkun olam. Oh yeah, I want the world to be a better place, but I have specific things that I'm doing, and that's why God's giving us the 10 Commandments. Again, the idea that there are specifics of what to do. So, I want everybody to take one of these little arcs with them on the way out. Keep it with you. Put it somewhere conspicuous. Make it a regular thing in your life. And I want to make sure I'm not missing anything here. Yeah, make it a regular thing in your life, because it will change your life. When you perceive your life as that of purpose, that of responsibility, then we actually get to change the world in a true and real perspective. Now, there's a whole other continuation of this about more specific mitzvot and how they kind of interplay with what we just said, but that'll have to be for a different time. Let me know if you'd like to hear that class, because we can talk about that as a whole other subject if you had another hour or so. But I've got to go. So, without further ado, I'd like to thank you all for joining me, and I hope to see you all again very soon.